Good morning, Ghosties. This is Sam Gilstrap, your host for the Ghost Lights podcast. Today, on episode 61, we sat down with Cajardo Lindsey, the writer, director, and star of Blackface, A Story of Nobody, a project that he's been working on for some time and is very near and dear to his heart. We covered his law career and how he stumbled into acting. This episode has been brought to you by This Week, in part, by The Whiskey Tasting, a production put on by both the Catamounts and DCPA's Off Center. There are still spots available for this unique interactive theater and whiskey experience, so please visit thewhiskeytasting.com for more information and tickets. Also, I'd like to recommend that you listen to listen to Destination Freedom Black Radio Days, wherever you get your podcasts from. It picks up where the first nationwide African-American radio drama produced in Chicago by Richard Durham more than 60 years ago left off. And our colleague and friend Donnie L. Betts is producing, directing, and collecting the stories for that podcast. Once again, episode 61 with Cajardo Lindsey. Sit back, enjoy. Now, Dan, give me War by the Hypnotic Brass Ensemble. Ladies and gentlemen, ghosties at home, this is your man, Sam Gilstrap. We are back again, episode 61 with the amazing, good friend, and I'm speechless. I've got him back. Cajardo Lindsey's in the house, everybody. What's up, Cajardo?
Hey, what's going on, Sam Gilstreezy?
That's measy. Oh, sheezy. All right, we could probably... I'm doing great. Thank you for asking. How have you been doing with the family the last couple of months?
Last couple of months specifically, we've been doing well. Both my sons have taken off and gone to college during this pandemic. That's the choice that they decided to make. So I have my youngest up in upstate New York, and my oldest is in Ohio right now. And so the house is pretty much empty. My wife is learning how to, and me as well, cook for just two folks. And we also have a new addition within the last 4 months, which is our dog, Sierra.
Oh, wow. What type of dog is it?
She is a mix between a miniature pinscher and a Jack Russell Terrier.
Oh, high energy dog?
Yes, you took the words right out of my mouth, man. My God. This girl, woo. Anyway, she can run. She jumps on everything. I mean, she's you can't catch her when you want to teach her. I mean, she's just, yeah, everywhere. But yes, that's our new addition.
Nice. I got a new dog too. His name is Mike, and he is always sleeping unless I'm dragging him around outside.
What kind of dog is Mike?
He's a 7.5-year-old coonhound mix.
Okay.
Yeah, big floppy ears, kind of overweight. I'm not so much to blame for that, but I am definitely to blame for it. But yeah, whenever I take him outside, like after a block and two, he stops sleeting. And
he's tired.
Yeah, just like I just end up dragging him. Like I'll take him around Cheeseman Park, and he could be in the best shape in the world, and he would still be like, "You're dragging me."
I'm done.
Yeah, I'm done.
I'm done.
I took care of my business a block ago. I'm done. Dogs are great, though. Have you, has your new dog already taken ownership of your heart?
Our new dog has taken ownership of my wife's heart. I'm still getting used to it.
Oh.
I am not, at least in the past, a dog person.
Mm.
I like to be able to get up in the morning and just go straight to meditation without barking and taking dogs out. And it's just, but I'm getting used to the inconvenience. I know people will be like, what, you don't like dogs? I didn't say I didn't like dogs.
Mm-mm.
I just said that I've not really had a dog. And here we are, and I'm adjusting to it. Yes.
I hear you. Don't misquote my man. If you do, I will come after you, people. He loves dogs fine. He's just He's got his
I'm just
things.
getting used to it.
He's
Yeah,
got his certain
I
things.
had a way of doing things for many, many years, and that all of a sudden switched and changed up. And so,
Oh yeah.
but I'm
Oh,
open to change. Life is full of it.
absolutely. Is that part of your routine? Wake up and meditate?
Yes,
Hmm.
most days I get up pretty well. I don't know if it's pretty early for everyone else, but I get up maybe about 6 o'clock, sometimes
Hmm.
5:45. Lately, I've been sleeping into 7. I don't know what's up with that, but typically I get up early in the morning. We have a little walk-in closet that I go into. I sit down and just clear my head, or I'll focus on the day, or I'll just do journaling in the dark,
Hmm.
extemporaneous writing.
Nice.
It's just something that I started doing, and that it just became habitual. And I think it's really helped me keep my sanity, especially during the pandemic.
Hmm. Did you notice an uptick in the stuff, like, or I should say, maybe a more focused writing in your journaling during the pandemic?
No, I was probably more focused questions,
Hmm.
more so than the journaling. Um, because a lot of things happened during the pandemic, at least for us, and for me came a lot of uncertainty, which brought up some fears in me that I hadn't necessarily had to encounter, but for the pandemic, which caused me to ask certain questions about direction and what can I do to get to the bottom of certain fears, and also how can I just be better used during this time period. And I'll ask questions, and then I'll just start writing without censoring, and to see what comes up. Sometimes I ask questions on behalf of family members and friends, and just deliver the message.
Hmm.
I can tell you for the most part, it doesn't, at least from my vantage point, it doesn't come from me. It's not coming from my intellect. It's not coming from my experience. It just comes from a place for me a lot deeper than that, to where when I read it, I'm like, okay, I'm encouraged. I feel like I have a direction in which to go. And I feel like it comes through this extemporaneous writing.
Hmm. Is that something you review after you've completed your meditation period?
Sometimes it's different every time. Sometimes I may even start out doing that, and then
Hmm.
I'll go into meditation. Sometimes it's in the middle. I'll feel the unction to write. I'll start writing, then I'll go back into a meditation. Sometimes I don't write at all. It
Hmm.
just is more so being in the moment of what's going on at that particular time.
Hmm. Was there a specific thing in your life that kind of spurned the desire to start meditating?
Um, I have for a long time been really drawn to spiritual things, for lack of a better term, and the desire to realize, for another lack of a better term. And I found for me, because I'm very analytical.
Hmm.
I'm an attorney by trade, which uh, is highly dependent on your analytical skills and thinking, and if this then that, and it just becomes exhausting. And I felt like I needed something to ground myself, and that was the meditation. And when I say meditation, I don't know if it's like a traditional meditation that other people do, but basically what I just do is I just sit down in silence and stillness. That's it. If a thought comes up, I don't resist it. I'll let it come through, and then I just sit and I'll listen to my breathing, and just be very specific with the moment. I'll take a breath in. Do I feel what nostrils going into? Where does it go into my body? When it comes out, where am I feeling it coming out? Sometimes I feel it coming out my left nostril, sometimes the right.
Hmm.
And just listening, and just what comes up. And through that process, especially I was having a rough period 4 or 5 years ago. Through that process, a lot of the things that I had suppressed throughout my whole life start to come up to be dealt with.
Hmm.
And when they did, I had the tools to deal with them. Whereas in the past, when I was younger, I didn't have the tools. I felt like what you need to do when things come up that are painful or traumatic is that you keep stuffing them and eventually they go away. I found
Hmm.
that that is not the case. They don't. They stay latent in the body and the cells. And It wasn't until I was able to get present to where those things happen, those traumas all happened in the present moment, that they started to come up to be dealt with. And I was able to just feel them, express them, and let them go about their merry way.
Hmm. I'm so glad we're on this topic so early in the pod. Um, that I'm assuming there was a necessity you felt within yourself to like face those demons, for lack of a better phrase.
Yeah, I had, without going too
Yeah.
detailed, I had a very unusual experience back in 2016. It actually happened to me in the middle of a play that I was doing down at the Denver Center,
Mm.
all the way. The best that I could describe it is that, and it just sounds weird, but everything in me was like, we cannot continue to go forward as we have been doing. And that was in all areas of my life. I mean, physically, emotionally, mentally, it's like everything. If there was a such thing as having a breakdown without necessarily actually going into a doctor and a hospital and saying, commit me, it's what I had. It was like there was this moment during that time period, that in that play, where my health started to decline tremendously. I lost a ton of weight. I went from like 205 down to 179 pounds in 2.5 months. That's a
Mm.
lot of weight. I was diagnosed with illnesses that I don't have now, but at the time, doctor says this is what you have. I was in tremendous fight or flight anxiety, and I had not really dealt with that in my life before, so I didn't really kind of know what it was. I mean, I had
Mm.
one bout earlier, which was similar to this one, but it was just like, what the heck is going on? To where the doctor says you have no adrenal glands. You've blown through them. You are in constant fight or flight,
Mm.
which is not a great place to be, especially when you're performing in front of hundreds of people, 8 performances a week. But I was given the grace. I had the grace for whatever to get through those performances. And after that play, things just started to fall apart, like mentally, emotionally, and physically. And what I gathered from it is that there was something deep down in my soul that wanted to, um, for lack of another better term, evolve and say, no, we're tired of living this way.
Mm.
We're tired of living in low self-esteem. We're tired of everything is about accomplishment. You know, me as an actor has changed tremendously too. We will no longer use this gifting to build yourself up. Now it's just to be used as a tool,
Mm.
whether it be plays or films, to help show people a mirror and be as genuine as you most possibly can, and as present as you can. But it's no longer about you, which is unfortunately, or not even unfortunately, was just my path. My path to the arts is like validation,
Mm-hmm.
esteem. Like, okay, let me find something I could do well, and then praise me for it, and then that's where I get my identity. And that whole structure said, nah, we're done.
Mm.
Fuck that. We will no longer exist in that way. And one of the major components that helped me transition into this new way of being, because how I see the world now is dramatically different than how I saw it then,
Mm.
is those times of stillness,
Wow.
especially in the morning.
I hear you.
Who knew, man? What are we talking about here, man? Look how you get me talking about this, Sam.
Well, it's
That's totally not what I anticipated talking about.
I'm
It's
just
all good though.
I trust I thank you for trusting me with some of this. I
Yeah,
definitely
absolutely.
when you started going down, it was like, yeah, I want to keep the things that are yours, but I'd also like you to share with me.
Yeah, for sure.
And so you know, I see you. Like that's absolutely why I kept theater in my life after college. It was the only place I was getting A's like that.
Hmm.
So it was like, oh, there it
Absolutely.
was. Like, okay, yeah. And I just
Give me
stayed.
more of that. Give me
Yeah, give
more
me
of
more of those
that.
A's. Give me more of those claps. Absolutely. This transition into not so much of a focus seeking of validation for your work, is that what drove you in this? I mean, within the last couple of years, I've seen blackface become a big part of your artistic goals. and getting that out there and completing it. And it sounded like it was something that you had been working on much longer than when you started sharing it in social media.
Yeah, so just so the listening audience understands what we're talking about with regard to blackface, I'm not going out performing in blackface.
Yeah.
It's more so it's actually a film that I've written called Blackface: The Story of Nobody, which in a nutshell is about a black man in 1918 who grows weary of performing in blackface, who gets the amazing opportunity to perform William Shakespeare's Hamlet on Broadway without blackface. But first, he must uncover his true worth. So, to answer your question, blackface came in really just before these major transitions in my life. So me writing, producing, and it's not just me. We both know film is a collaborative effort. So there are a whole ton of people who are associated with this project right now. But what I would just call this transformation, the blackface came just about a year or two before that, and now it's integrated within my very own a transformation. And the story that we're telling is the story of a man very like myself who has broken his neck, and so to speak, to be validated and accepted through his art, not necessarily based on who he is, but what he can do, who eventually needs to come or will come to an awakening and a knowledge of self to know that he is who he is, not because of what he does, but because of who he is. And nothing outside of him, whether it be hand claps, applause, and even doing Shakespeare on Broadway, will ever fill this deep hole that we have in us. It has to be done from the inside out, not the outside in. And that's pretty much, I'm writing what I know about because I'm going through the very experience myself.
Yeah. Did that transition period shift the direction that blackface was going down?
Yeah, it can't help be influenced by where I am right now presently. Every time I go down to do a rewrite, if I wait 3 months to do it, it was like, okay, I see things slightly different. This is what this moment is about, or this is what he says, or this is what he doesn't do. And so, yes, it is fiercely intertwined with my own life experience as it is today. And the project has evolved with me and will probably continue to evolve until it is set in stone, either digitally or on celluloid once the film is done.
Yeah. What's the process like for getting this going?
Put it like this.
Yeah.
If I knew what I was getting into when I said back in March 2019 that I was going to do a independent film, not sure whether I would go down that road. However, I've done so much and been learned so much through the process that it's almost like I'm almost over the bridge now. There's no need to turn back, no need to stop.
Yeah.
So it's a lot involved, and I learn more every day about the process. They tell you that when you become an independent filmmaker, you're actually a small business owner. And I found it to be true. However, this is a lot more challenging than other small businesses that I have run, that are solo small businesses that are basically dependent on me alone, that I can run, and maybe an additional person. This filmmaking experience is so collaborative. And I can go on names upon names of different people, and it's filled with many things that I personally don't know how to do, or I'm not adept at doing, or even have no interest in doing. My interests are shaping stories. My interests are acting. My interests are offering opportunities to people like me, who someone gave me an opportunity. It's like, you got to start somewhere, and someone's waiting on an opportunity to show what they have in them, this gifting. And I love being able to be a part of offering those opportunities. Things that I'm not so much into is creating marketing materials, pitching and asking folks for money, and So it's a very involved process. However, having said that, we have some wonderful people on our team that help spread the duties that need to be done when you're encountering something like this. One of which is my wife,
Hmm.
who is a producer on the film. I have a small team that we meet weekly, um, specifically for improving pitch materials, raising money, brainstorming on how to raise money, and social media. And that team is my wife, Mashonda. We have a woman out of Philadelphia. Her name is Kelly Jackson, who's involved in various film festivals, who's been in the business for years. And we also have a younger member, Tia Phillips, who is a former student of Colorado College and who will be going to get her master's in screenwriting down in Colorado College. And we just meet weekly. We build each other up. We discuss the to-do list of what we need to do. How can we do it better? Just an array of different things. And so it's an incredibly collaborative process that I could even begin to do on my own, and it's more than a notion. I can tell you that.
Yeah.
Because everybody has opinions too, of like what your story is or what it should be about, and you're trying to get good, healthy criticism on how to make it better.
Hmm.
And it's a lot to this process.
No,
It's a
absolutely.
lot, and
Yeah.
I'm not complaining. I'm actually learning. I'm like, wow, okay, this will be a lot easier once we finish this, and the next time we come around.
Yeah. I'm glad that at least it sounds like there's a mindset that there will be a next time. There'll be
Oh
another
yes,
production.
well that's what I desire. The company that we started, my wife and I, 2211,
Hmm.
it's just geared toward telling these types of stories, inspiring stories that involve people of color.
Ah, I was going to ask, like, what types of stories are you focusing on specifically?
People of color, stories that have a spiritual component, not religious, but a spiritual component about overcoming, finding the gold that is within, as opposed to seeking what is without. I mean, it's just basically our family's experiences, and see how can we tell that story in a lot of different ways. We can
Mhm.
tell that through horror. We can tell that through drama. I'm writing a horror story right now. I'm only 6 pages in, but I mean, even the spiritual overtones are coming out in the first 6 pages.
Ah,
So, I mean, we write what we know about.
hmm. How do you just some sparked me here? How do you draw the line between spirituality and religion?
Um, for me,
Yeah.
uh, and I've never even actually answered this question, but spirituality for me is inside out, whereas religion would be outside in. I've been heavily into religion since I was a child, and my experience and what I've noticed that it is a lot of what's outside or showing what's outside and conforming to various rules. And I'm not saying religion is bad, it's just not for me. Um, Whereas for me, spirituality comes from the inside, and it's a deeper dive into the divine in me, as opposed to the divine outside of me in the sky, sitting on a chair in the clouds, that is directing everything. It's like I feel like the divine is in us.
Yes.
We are the divine. The God that, well, this is kind of controversial, but the only God we're ever going to meet is within each other.
Hmm.
That's how I feel about it. We are divine individuals.
Yeah. Ah, I totally agree with you. It took me a very long time, and I'm still hammering at all my feelings on the subject. But I mean, when I think about it, yes, I'd love to be wrong, but the God that I was seeking my whole life, that energy, that belief was here,
Yes.
and I had to, you got to sift through a lot of stuff, and even as you're sifting, some like it's like when you're digging a hole on the beach with your hands, and every time you
Hmm.
pull back a big chunk of dirt, some falls right back in, and you got to
Yes.
start the work again. And
Hmm.
that's just, that's kind of how I feel that this. this process is working for me.
Excellent analogy. I love that. I'm going to use that. That's awesome.
Yeah, please do. Put it in your next movie.
I'll put
When
you in the next movie.
Please do. I will do whatever you ask me to do, sir. I will be there.
You're my
What
man.
what are some of the challenges you faced becoming a filmmaker?
What initially comes to mind is my own self. I'm the challenge, the doubt that is within, the voices that say, you've never done this before. How are you going to do this? So the voices that say, why did you tell all those people you're going to create a film? You've never done this before. How do you know you're going to do this? And who's going to help you with this? And who's going to help you with that? I mean, that has been the biggest challenge is myself. And then often I found myself throughout this process, adding to those challenges. When you talk to various people, like I said earlier, everybody has an opinion on how this process should go. And that's not to invalidate anyone who's been through it and it worked that way for them. Initially, when I said I was going to do this, I had access to various people, people who've actually made films and people who will be considered named talent in films that we've seen. And they say certain things of this is what you got to do. And initially I was like, well, you've done that before, you actually doing it. So I gave sanction to what they said.
Mm-hmm.
And it wasn't until, in those meditative moments in the morning, it says, no, Cajardo. Yeah, some of what they say may be true for them, but it doesn't necessarily have to happen that way for you. One of the examples was there was a named actor saying, in order for this to work, you're going to have to get some named talent. Named talent, for anyone out there who doesn't know what that is these are stars. People, when you look at them, you know who they are as soon as you see them. You look at me, unless you're a Colorado theater goer and go to certain theaters, you probably wouldn't know who I am. But they're saying you have to have named stars. And I went on this tangent of, I need to have named stars. And then in that meditation, it was like, well, what do you mean you need to have this? The story is about figuring out that you're enough. Mm-hmm. So you're telling me that you're going to figure out you're enough by adding people to make you enough. Adding these named people, and then you'll be enough, Cajardo. Is that how it works? Oh, is that the story we're telling? I'm like, no, that's not the story we're telling. I'm telling Blackface the story of nobody. The nobodies out there, the people who no one would ever see, the people who stand under the radar, the marginalized. This is what this story is about. That's what this story is about. And not to say that we won't eventually have named talent, but it won't be because it's needed. It's because it was right for the project. It's what happened organically. It wasn't because if we don't have them, then the show doesn't go on. Mm-hmm. It's not like we have money, but we don't have a named actor, so we're not going forward. No, that's not what we're telling. That's not the direction that we're going.
It sounds like that. I mean, that push is more where your heart was telling you to go, as opposed to what you were being offered. Like it wasn't just circumstantial. It was like, no, I can do this. That's the point of this.
Yes.
Nice.
Yes, I mean, and even at that, that's a learning process. I have a really, really good friend. His name is Travis. He's a filmmaker. He does most of his work in LA, and he's a writer and script doctor. And it wasn't for him, I don't know if we'd be talking right here today, at least not about this project. But he was the one that convinced me. He says, Cajardo, let's start shooting. I'm like, what are you talking about, man? I just wrote a script. He's like, well, when you write a script, what are you writing it for? I'm like, I don't know. I was just writing, man. He's like, no, let's shoot something. I'm like, oh, and he planted that seed within me. Because in my mind, I was like, I knew that's what you do with scripts, but in my mind, I'm like, I've never done it. I don't even know who would help me do this. Who's to say that you can do this, Cajardo? Don't stay in your lane. You're an actor. Get the script, and then you. But he challenged me, and I'm like, okay. And I asked a bunch of questions. I got on the internet. I mean, of course, I've done this for 20 years, film and television and theater. So I kind of knew what goes on a set. And he said, let's go for it. And we got some people together and we shot that first proof of concept short film.
Mm-hmm.
We shot that and it aired over the summer of 2019 at the Color of Conversations Film Festival, inaugural film festival, which is hosted by Stephanie and Floyd Rance, who recently moved to Colorado. But I mean, without him planting that seed saying, let's do it, I don't know that I would have ever said, let's get it going. And then we did it. And it's like, well, what's the process? And I relied heavily for that first proof of concept on Mitch Dickman, who's a fellow filmmaker in town. We're good buddies, and he really helped me out through that process. I was able to storyboard it, found a cinematographer, communicated the vision that I had for it. We set a shooting date, and as that date approached, I was shaking in my boots, man.
Mm-hmm.
I was shaking in my boots. I was like, I got all these people to come together. I'm using my own money. I've taken my own money, my family's money to pay folks. This was before we did the Kickstarter. And you have no idea how this is going to turn out. It was like the fear of the unknown. And you're doing it in blackface in front of a bunch of people, and which is humiliating.
Mm.
You know.
Yeah.
Not as an actor, but I mean, that's what it's humiliating. That's how we were portrayed.
Yeah.
You know, and to have to explain that to folks who this is their first encounter with it. They're like, well, what is this? I've heard about it, and but what actually is it?
Mm-hmm.
And so I was filled with a lot of trepidation. But that morning, I got up. I felt like everybody knew their assignments, and I had the grace to communicate what I wanted done. And once we did that, had the grace to let it go. I told my assistant director what I want. We all agreed on the shots and how we want to get them. And now, Cajardo, you have to trust them. And I let it go. And then I went and did the acting part and got in front of the camera. And I was as committed as I've ever been with everything that was going on of like, I'm gotta let go. This is not an intellectual exercise.
Was
I mean,
that
I went and had my acting lessons, my coaching. I mean, I always, for the most part, COVID has really stepped into that. But I mean, got coaching on it, and I just had to I let the acting go. This character is coming through.
Yeah,
it's coming through, and I'm not going to measure it. I'm just going to allow it to be what it is.
was that hard for you, that letting go? It doesn't sound like it.
No, it wasn't. Moment. I thought it would be. I thought it would be. I was told that it would be. I've been told you need to get somebody else to direct it because you're using two different sides of your brain to do these two different things. And when that first was said to me, I was like, well, I've never even experienced it, so I don't know yet. So I'm not going to accept that as my truth. And I didn't have a problem doing it. I didn't have a problem doing it. We shot another proof of concept video in this past August in the middle of COVID, which premiered in October at the Color of Conversations Film Festival over at Cleo Parker Robinson's theater. And I had the same experience. And that time, what I wanted to show myself, because the first proof of concept, it was me. I mean, we didn't have the money to pay a bunch of other actors and extras. And so we were creative in how we created the feeling of people there, but it was just me on stage. The next challenge was, okay, Cajardo, you can direct yourself on what you want or allow that to move through you, but can you direct other actors and even children? And so we took another scene from the film and we shot another proof of concept that showed the family.
With Jada, right?
And I felt, yes, with Jada. Jada played my wife, and Sael Charles played one of my nephew, and Lila Brooks Roberts played a role in that as well. And to be quite honest, Sam, it felt like home. It felt like I was born to do it. like I knew exactly what to say to the actors. And I don't even know if that even came from being an actor. It may have. Maybe I was talking to them how I like to be talked to when I'm on set, but I literally, I was able, we were doing our scenes and I was observing myself, but also being in it as
Mm.
well. And so fiercely committed to the scene we're taking, and then able to take my actor aside and say, okay, now let's do it like this. Da, 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 da. I was amazed at that. I'm not, puffing myself up, but I was amazed that I was able to come from these two different vantage points at the same time. Now, whether I did it well, I mean, that remains to be seen. Well, no, and it doesn't. I did the best that I could. It is what it is,
Yeah.
and folks who've seen it have appreciated the work.
It felt like a success to you, and that's what matters.
What else matters?
Absolutely.
Exactly.
Yeah. I it's so interesting to hear you talk about seeing yourself and observing yourself in that moment while you're living it. And I wonder, would you we kind of talked to how you kind of mentioned how you don't know where it was coming from or or what allowed you to experience it in that way. But do you feel like maybe it was just the confidence from the first time shooting your proof of concept that was developed there, that ability to articulate and let go of your vision carrying
Mm,
over? Is it just you
no,
knew the people
no,
you were with?
because no, because well, in some respects, yes.
Mm.
I had confidence in, okay, I've storyboarded this. I had the same conversation. This is just a different scene. This is we've done this before. um, what I did not have confidence in, which ended up turning out fabulous, is COVID. We hired a COVID compliance officer, which was Kinsey Kilroy, who was excellent in separating us in our zones according to the union rules and whatnot.
Mm.
So I was like, how is that going to work? And there was that added fear of what if somebody gets sick on this set? I don't know what I would do. That would be awful if something. So we were dealing with that. But what I had not had the experience in specifically is directing other actors,
Mm.
specifically children. And I love children. And to prepare for that, I called and I said, I have friends who have directed kids for shows. And I found a guy who had directed a couple of the Christmas Carol shows down at the Denver Center. And I had a conversation and I said, hey, I'd love to talk to you about working with kids. But before I do that, I want to tell you what my approach would be and tell me what you think of that. I want to know if I'm in the ballpark. This is what I would do with these children to help them get in the moment or just to play.
Mm.
And when I got finished with my vision for how to direct these children, he was like, "Man, you're spot on." And then he came and complimented that with, "You can do this, you can do that, and the other." And then I took all that information, then I brought it to these two children who I know I've seen before, but never dealt with them in an artistic capacity, and knew that I had to be flexible even with them because they're human beings. They respond differently based on different stimuli and trying to figure out what that is. And we were able to have a nice 30-minute conversation before, just playing, talking about life, ba 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 ba. And every now and then sneak in a little bit about what we were trying to do with the script and see if they were comprehending it. And these are smart kids, man. It was a joy. It was a joy to cast them and to work with them.
Wow. That's that's really cool.
They
The
got it. I mean, there was one moment like just to let you know how they got it. And this moment specifically was regarding Lila.
mm.
We'd had a shot, a scene, and I'm directing them to see something that hasn't taken place. We're going to shoot the next part the next day. I'm telling them this is what you're seeing, and I'm letting them play as children and say, we're doing this. See us right. We're actually out there doing this right now. You might not, but that's your job." And
Mm.
they're like, okay, okay. And then I was telling them and walking them through, because of course we're going to take my audio out and keep theirs. And there's a moment something happened, and I said, Lila, what do you think about your reaction? Does it take a little time? That she's, I got you. This is a little 9-year-old girl. She's like, yeah, I wouldn't have done that quickly. I need to first see it. And basically what she was saying was, I need to see it, then let it register, and then comes the reaction. I was like, and so when she had it, I quit talking. And I said, okay, you got it. And we did it next time perfectly. And I was like, whoa, that, this is fun.
Yeah. 9 years old?
Yes.
Wow.
Yes. Yes.
That's amazing.
Yes.
Is that something you would attribute specifically to her? Or do you think that's a capability that a lot of kids share?
I don't know about a lot of kids. My kids haven't been that age in a long time. And I haven't been around children that age since my kids were that age, and doing sleepovers and going to schools. And so I don't know about a lot of kids. I suspect that it was a confluence of everything, like them being comfortable with me, them knowing that I'm in their corner and I want to present them in the best light possible. And then their own innate ability as actors, and then their own intelligence. And so I think it was a combination of a lot of things, but as far as whether other kids could do that, I would imagine so. I mean, they're more close to playing than we are. It's hard to get us to play and be in the moment when we're older, and we're so worrying about whether or not how we're going to be viewed and how we're going to be seen.
Mm-hmm.
I have a couple of scenes written in the movie that I'm like, wow, Cajardo, can you pull this shit off? Can you really do this? And it's because it requires me to get wholly outside of myself and to present myself way beyond anything that Cajardo would do in his normal life and anything that Cajardo has done on an acting stage, and it's just like, you got to let go, buddy. You got to let go. You got to play. You got to play like when you were a child. And I suspect those kids are closer to that than we are. And then there are just actors that we know that are just, that's their gifting. They can just flow in la imagination land and be it automatically. It takes me a little to settle down and to let go, but it gets easier and easier the older I get.
Nice. I have to write that down. Gifting. You've said it a couple of times in regards to the work that you do. You're sharing your talents, gifting, yes?
Yes.
Wonderful. When you were writing this, did you specifically going to those moments where you are questioning, can you do this, Cajardo? Did you put that in there trying to challenge yourself, or was that just the natural progression?
No. So when I write, for the most part, I try to write that's what's in me. And I had already outlined the story. This is what happens then, and this is what happens here, and this is when he gets knocked down again and he has to get back up. And so those moments were there. And then you start to put the meat on the bones. And it's like, I think this happens during those quiet moments where when you get quiet and you start hearing the voice of, this is what happens. I'm like, really? Oh, okay. And I write it out. So I'm not trying to challenge myself. I'm not, to be quite honest, trying to do anything but write the story as it comes out. My mind isn't thinking, wow, this will be a great story to, say, for instance, 15 years ago. Let me write something that I can get me noticed. Let me write something that'll get me an Academy Award, da 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 da. Not that those things aren't nice to experience. I'm not saying that at all. But my writing process now is, well, what? And a lot of it is my own experience. It's like, I've been this. I know that. I know what it feels like to have people look at you and think that you have it all together and you're shaking in your fucking boots. I know that. I know I can write that. I know what it's like to overcome those fears and get out there and do something. I know what that's about. And then there's other things I'm like, it comes out and I'm like, I've never done that.
Mm.
And I just write it. I'm like, I've not done that.
Mm-hmm.
And I mean, stuff that I would actually, and I've had plans for it, actually need consultation on.
Yeah.
Someone who actually does do those things and say, I need to work with you. I need to work with you for a week
Mm-hmm.
to learn the rudiments. What is the foundations of these things?
Yeah.
And then, like a magician, make it look like I've always known how to do these things.
Right. Do the work.
Do the work.
Mm. How much research did you do in lieu of writing this?
Well, the story is inspired by an actual historic figure.
Oh.
Inspired. I didn't write this man's story, but it definitely was inspired by Bert Williams. Bert Williams was a blackface minstrel in the early 1900s and was prolific. He was a comedian. At one point in time, was the highest grossing recording artist of his era. He made tons of money. He lived in Harlem, New York. Uh, and I read no less than 3 biographies about him. And I have 2 or 3 other books that I've skimmed through on his life. And one thing that was pretty consistent, which is where I got the idea for it. We never even talked about how I got the idea for this story.
Yeah.
But part of it came from his desire to want to do more than blackface minstrelsy.
Mm.
Minstrelsy. He wanted to do Shakespeare, but at the time that he came around, it just wasn't possible. At the time that he came around, if a black man wanted to get on stage, especially anywhere near Broadway, you did it in blackface. It was the Netflix of the time. Everybody performed in blackface. That's what people want, not people. That's what white folks wanted to see. Those are the folks who owned the theaters, who managed the theaters, who were going to the theaters for the most part.
Mm-hmm.
And it was a hit, a huge hit for almost 100 years. And we're still dealing with it in many respects today with people who want to put a little blackface on and pay homage to their favorite black entertainers or whatnot. I mean, yeah.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, so it was inspired by Bert Williams. So the research was that. And then also doing research on where did this come from? How did it come into being? And when did it start to phase out? And how does this play in my story? Would this ever have been possible? And if not, then how do we get to the point where we're actually doing it in this story?
Yeah.
And so that was the research.
Have you found a parallel in terms of the physical act of performing as a black person in blackface and things you had to do in your earlier career? I mean, I'm not saying you've definitely done a show like that.
No, I understand. I think I understand what you're saying. And I can say that for the most part, thank God for those who came before. But yeah, I've had my share of going out for thugs and whatnot, and it turned down a fair amount too. But to that extent, to where I feel like I am selling myself out, no. I can't think of any type of experience. I can feel experiences where I feel like limited as I would imagine my protagonist does in my story, and the actual Bert Williams did, where you feel limited, that people only see you a certain way. That's another reason why I wrote the story, is that I love classical theater. And hey, maybe I just suck at it, but I can tell you this, I was not being cast.
Mm-hmm.
It's not. It was only seriously considered when it came to Othello.
Mm-hmm.
When we're talking about like classical works. And I was like, I can do these other roles. I can do Hotspur. I can do Hamlet. I can do Macbeth. I can do Richard II. But I felt like this the place where I was auditioning, and I don't know what it was all about, but at the end of the day, I wasn't being cast.
Mm-hmm.
I've been understudy a couple of times, and I've had one lead Shakespearean role since I've been in Colorado
Wow.
acting. And that was when I first got here. And I have been cast one in another role with a hugely significant role. But I was unable to do that because of my legal schedule. But for the
Mhm.
most part, my experience has been, no, this is not for you. This is for us.
Ah,
This is not for you. And that could be a multiplicity of reasons for that. It could be because of equity contracts. It could be because I'm just not fit that director's vision. But I can tell you how it felt after year after year after year after year of being on stages, being recognized for your work, but not being the door not being open to do classical work. It felt like there was something more to it, and thank God for it because it forced me to write. And I identified with this guy when I read. I said, I know how it feels to want to do something and people see you a certain way. And the idea came to me: why don't you write about a black-faced minstrel who gets the opportunity, since he wanted to do that, to play Hamlet on Broadway?
mm,
And fuck what they say about this would never happen. Well, we've reimagined and it happened in my story,
nice.
you know.
Yeah.
And things are changing, you know. We see you, it's forcing a lot of theaters to look at the way that they've cast things. And even before that, there was a couple of theaters here and there um, who were thinking non-traditionally and casting people of color in these Shakespearean roles where the story is heavily thematic and not necessarily about what color you are, you know.
Mhm.
But you know what? I'm not upset about it. I was like, you know what? If that's what it took to get me to write, God bless it. God bless those feelings.
Mm.
After every audition, I walk away, and we all know as an actor, no one books, you know, high percentages, and so to a certain extent, it comes with the territory. But with regard to classical stuff, I just felt like it felt different for me.
So,
But it got me writing, and then next thing you know, we've written a story that is a semifinalist at the Austin Film Festival, semifinalist for diverse voices with We Screenplay, a finalist with diverse not diverse voices, but We Screenplays feature screenwriting labs, and so that's what it took to push me. And God bless it.
yeah, it's definitely pushed you to a high quality of work, it sounds like.
I don't know. Well, who's the judge of that? But
Yeah, I guess so.
I can say that I feel more present with the word.
Mm, really
I feel
interesting.
like I can let go
Definitely.
and let the character do its stuff. And then every now and then I do get in my own way. We know what that's like as an actor. It's like, oh, we let me let me impose upon this character and let me give the audience what I think they want to see,
Hmm. Hmm.
as opposed to what is actually happening in that moment, and trusting that. I feel like I'm getting better at that.
Yeah.
Whether that's seen in my work from someone outside of me, I have no idea. I have no idea.
Mm. How's the barometer for yourself?
Yeah, the barometer for myself is exactly what I'm talking about.
Yeah.
I feel like I'm letting go. And then
Mhm.
when I'm not letting go, I'm aware that I'm not
Yeah.
and able to go inside and what's this about. I'm not saying that every performance I do, I feel like I'm in bliss and I'm unconscious and I'm just in the moment. But this is like anything else. I mean, you keep doing it, the more you do it, the better you get. Or the more you're able to release to it. If you already have the innate talent for it, then it comes out that way as well.
Hmm.
I don't have the talent to be a bodybuilder. I'm not getting up under 500 pounds and doing it, but I can work my way to that.
Hmm.
There are people who are physically, they're able, that's their talent. They can do that. It's not a problem. Um, I see the same thing with acting. There are actors out there who, by all accounts, if you see their personal lives, it's a freaking mess. But when they're able to get into the work, they're able to be present like none other. That's just gifting that they were given.
Yeah.
I don't know that that's me. I just know that I'm aware of it and open to being more present in the work.
Mm. Have you trying to find the words for this question? When you started acting, Was it the work that excited you that made you want to do it more often and get to a specific place with your career? Was it something else?
It was just it was a spiritual inspiration.
Mm.
That's how it started for me. I actually started acting in law school and was never thinking about it. Never had only seen one play in my life, and that was when I was in middle school. Had no interest in it. Um, and one day, or actually it was a week, a series of days, as I was going to one of my acting classes, I kept hearing this inner voice say acting. And I was like, what the heck is going on? If I keep hearing this again. And so finally, on like the fourth or fifth day, I went to I lived off campus and I went through the register book. We had this book and I said, does Indiana University have a theater school? And they did. And so instead of going to class, I walked over to the theater school. I think this was my second year of law school. And I walked in and it was this woman sitting there. Her name was Marilyn Norris. I said, ma'am, I'm a law student, but something tells me that I'm supposed to be acting, which is bizarre, man. I mean, I can't explain to you how bizarre it was to have that because I'm like, I had no frame of reference for any of that. And she took me by the hand. She did, and she says, "Well, um, let's start you out by coming and watching the National Society of Arts and Letters acting competition, which our master's students are going through." I was like, "Great, cool, okay, I'll do that." And when she said that, something lit in me, and I said, "I want to be in it," and I signed up for it. I'd never had done an acting class, and I found two pieces of Man and Superman from George Bernard Shaw, and I did 6 Degrees of Separation from John Guare, I think his name is. And I memorized those pieces and got a note to self, never get a music professional to help you with your acting auditions unless they have that gifting too. But anyway, I mean, the guy told me when you say this, you lift your hand. And when you say this, you turn your head. Whatever it was, I didn't know any better. And I did exactly what he told me to do. And there's some things that get me on stage because I was frightened to get on stage with these master's MFA students. But I got on stage and I did it. And it was just, in hindsight, it was awful. But the judges who were professors at Indiana University, they complimented me on things that they could. And they said things like, man, you have a presence and there's something about you, not about the acting, because it wasn't there at all. It's just like, there's something there. And that's where it all started for me. And once that started, I want to be a movie star. I want to make tons of money. I want to do this, that, the other, because I felt like each year I got better at it. Each year I got better. And then it was great for my ego and it was great to build an identity out of until it wasn't.
Yeah. What were some of your earlier influences then? If you didn't have the frame of reference before that period of time in law school, but as you started working at the school, like what were some of the things?
Well, this is what happened. So I found out that there was a program at my school, Indiana University, where I could take outside classes outside of my acting. I mean, not outside of my legal studies. And I can take them for credit if I could show that there was a nexus between that outside discipline and what I would be doing as an attorney. So I was in law school taking acting 101 classes, voice classes, acting 102 classes. I was doing a double caseload. I was doing acting and law, but I wasn't doing acting towards any degree. It was just because I wanted to act. And they were giving me legal credit for the acting classes that I was taking. And so that became my frame of reference, my earlier acting teachers, 101 acting teachers. That's all I knew.
Wow.
I knew nothing else. I had never seen anything else except for Oliver Twist in the 7th grade. Of course, I'd seen movies and all that, but as far as theater, my entrance was through theater. And so that was it. That was it. Wow. And taking auditioning classes. And my first play was a play written by, I can't even remember his name, but it was done off campus. It wasn't even an Indiana University play. It was a play in Bloomington, a community theater play called Between Men and Cattle. and I played a waiter with no lines.
Mm.
And you'd have thought that I was freaking Humphrey Bogart. I was like, oh my gosh, I got my first play. And from that, it came something else. And from that, I got called to go to Indianapolis and I auditioned for this equity production. And then I got cast in that. And I'm like, how did this happen? But I just feel like, I was born to do it. Well,
Do you feel
I didn't
similar?
put it like this. I didn't pick it. It chose me. I wasn't even
Yeah.
looking for it.
No, absolutely. You're on your way to another law class and you can't
Correct.
shake that voice.
And then another thing that helped me, and I forgot to mention, is I did my last semester of law in London. I clerked in the British Inns of Court. While I was over there, all I did was watch theater every night. That was the first time I saw an August Wilson play.
Wow.
Was in London. I saw Two Trains Running, and I was like, "What the heck? This is what I'm doing." And when I came back to the States, I got my law degree, and I became an actor. I didn't practice law for another 8 years, 7 or 8 years. When I needed to make some money,
Mm-hmm.
is when I went and took the bar and became an attorney. But after I came back from London, it was like, oh, that's what I want to do. I want to do what they're doing. I'm watching West End plays day after day, Hamlet, Inspector Calls, Les Mis, Two Trains Run. I'm just like, this is what I want to do
Mm.
for $5 a performance.
How,
Oh my.
there was a time where you could see theater for $5.
Well, it was the student prices, and
Yeah.
you go right before the show starts, and this was years ago.
Yeah,
It
yeah. I,
wasn't five, it was £5 actually. So what is that? What, $7?
I am this. I got into theater because math is hard for me. So don't even ask me on how to do conversion rates.
I hear you.
Did you just something I've always wanted to ask you? That passion that you found to be an actor, was that there for law when you were studying it, and when you came back to it? Like, it's not like I need the money,
No,
so.
no, I never had passion for law.
Oh wow.
Never had passion for law. I went to law school because I got my behind kicked through some racial stuff, and and I was the one that ended up getting arrested, and I was the one that got the criminal record.
Mm.
And when that happened, I felt incredibly disempowered, if that's even a word. And I said, I need to figure out how to know what my rights are. And I went to law school. That's why I went. Now, there were some benefits from going, which is, when I was in law school, I was able to do the British externship, the clerking in the British Inns of Court, or clerking in New York City at the National Football League. But it was never my aim to actually become a lawyer. And then when this acting came in, I was cool just with the degree. And it
Mm.
wasn't until later when I did, actually, like I said, we needed to make money. I had two young kids. I'm like, well, what else can I do? And my wife was like, don't you have a law degree? I'm like, what? Well, a lawyer? Are you kidding me? But I ended up doing it, and I've been one ever since.
Mm.
And so when I say passion, there are elements of it that get me going. And those are trials in which I'm able to use many facets of myself in order to tell those stories, one of which is the theater
Yeah.
aspect of myself. Why would you have it and not use it in your trials? And so I've used it in many trials. But as far as passion for it, I wouldn't say that. I do like to help people. And I do realize that I had some really strong gifting in certain areas in order to tell stories in front of a jury that other attorneys from me watching just didn't have.
Mm-hmm. A specific presence.
That and the ability to use your voice, the ability to personify characters without having them be there to talk to people who aren't there, but help people envision what happened because I am acting it out. Even imitation. And once you've heard witnesses testify, I find myself mimicking them, and so that the jury remembers what was said.
Mm.
Pausing, dramatic pauses, all this stuff that comes natural when you're just doing acting for so long, I found was creeping out into my legal work.
Mm.
trial practice specifically. The other aspects of motions and drafting and all that, just I don't see that as one of particularly my strengths.
Yeah. It seems like a job where you're constantly in your head when you're not on trial for a specific day. Is backtracking to our earlier conversation on meditation, is that something that you work in after a day at the office before you go to rehearsal or before you sit down in front of the
No,
computer?
it's not like that. This is mainly in the morning. This
Mainly in the
mainly in the
morning.
morning. I mean, and to be quite honest, some of my most stressful times is when my legal career and my acting career overlapped.
Mm,
Meaning, I have a big, long, giant, important trial, whether it be when I was doing criminal work, it might be a homicide case or a civil work, whereas this huge case against an insurance company. And
mm,
then that same night, I need to go do a performance. That stressed me out.
mm,
And I was able to get it to the point where those didn't overlap too often. But when they did, which is what happened back in almost in 2016,
mm.
when I had a huge trial, and on the heels of that, I'm right into all these rehearsals. It was just like, whoa, well, it could be a lot because it's just you are for me at that time. I was doing two different things.
Yeah. Wearing those hats. And those are two, I mean, while you may be able to incorporate some of your skills and talents from performing, those are definitely two different hats you got to put on.
Yes,
Yeah.
yes. For the most part, there are aspects that are they're the same. Like when you're doing opening or closing arguments where it's just you talking, then that's more theater. But then when
Mm,
you're doing the questioning and the examinations and cross examinations, it's a different muscle. At least for
absolutely.
me, it was.
What is that ghost light you wish you had on for you before you started working on blackface?
Can you ask that question a different way?
Yes, I can. What is that? What is the piece of advice or awakening within you wish you had at the start of the process of creating that story?
Um, I don't.
Mm,
I like the way that it evolved because I was able to learn through the way that it was happening. If I'd always started out that way, this would just be more about an exercise in creating something and then presenting it to a group of people. This has been part of growth for me. I didn't always recognize it that way. It has been a part of growth of do you really mean what you say when you say that this story is about recognizing and finding out that I am enough? Um, because it'll show where you're not, where you feel that you're not. Put it
mm-hmm.
that way. And so I wouldn't trade anything for it. And in fact, I've gone the opposite route. Because I mean, I'm not, man, when I say I get up and meditate, I'm not talking to you like I'm Eckhart Tolle or I'm freaking self realized. No, I
Yeah,
mean, I have my own struggles. Like, like I would imagine a lot of people do. And so, I mean, this is just one thing that I feel the universe is used to help me grow.
definitely.
And hopefully, in helping me grow, the story that is told is going to give liberty to folks who watch. You know what theater does, or movies do. It inspires you to be fully who you are. You see something in yourself up there on screen, you're like, man, boom. And I just think it's particularly special for me to have a black man who's a protagonist in his own story, taking agency and figuring it out as he goes through and he makes his mistakes as well. It's not something that we get to see uh, too often. It's happening more,
Mm,
especially since George Floyd. There's this interest now in in making sure our stories are told and seen, and for whatever reason, great, great.
yeah,
But yeah,
no, definitely. Before we go away, you had mentioned that there's a performance piece that you're working on. Are you at liberty to talk about where that would be available and what's it called and who's putting it on?
um, man, I'm so embarrassed, but it's one of those things where I have a really good friend
Mm,
who asked me to do it. And so I haven't even fully read the script. I just know that we rehearse once, I believe, next week. And then the following week, we're going to perform it. I do know that it is with a theater company that was started by women for women. It is out of, I believe, Chicago. I am the only male in the piece. And that's all the information that I have at this moment.
No worries, no worries.
Yeah.
That sounds interesting. If you get that title to me, let me know, and I'll put it on the page, the Facebook page.
Thank you.
Absolutely.
Thank you.
I just want to thank you so much for sitting down with me a second time. We did a podcast way back in the day when I was still doing everything off my cell phone, and
yeah, that was pretty cool.
It was really humbling for me, and it was a big get to get you that first time. And every time we talk, I'm reminded of one of the last nights we were doing Night of the Iguana together, and there was something different about your pre-show routine. And I was sitting in the back hallway, and you came back there to join me, sit back there, and we were quiet for a long time. And I was quiet because you're my man, and I look up to you, and I didn't know what to say, and all that stuff. And then
I remember that vaguely, yes.
Yeah. And then by the end of it, we were talking back and forth, and it was just, the lights were dim in the hallway, and I was like, here I am sitting with an idol, and I'm about to go play with him. And
you were amazing. You were simply amazing, amazing in that. And I'm so glad we met when we did. Sam and I go way back. In my opinion, we go way back.
Yes, we do.
And I love him. I love him like a brother.
Oh man, Cajardo, that means the world to me. That really does. Thank you so much. I feel the same way. Ladies and gentlemen, ghosties, it's Cajardo Lindsey. The piece is Blackface, a story of nobody. Please be on the lookout for it. Follow them, Blackface, on Instagram.
On Instagram at Blackface Movie. On Twitter at Blackface Movie. On Facebook at Blackface Movie. And you can also catch our website at blackfacemovie.com.
Absolutely. Get on board with this one. I've seen the first proof of concept video. I've seen the imagery from it. It is, and I know the man putting it all together. It's going to be special. He's absolutely right that it's a story that we don't get to see that often, even if we see a transition occurring right now to maybe get these stories out there more often. He's doing it. He's going to be special. It was a special conversation. Thank you so much.
Thank you for having me.
Absolutely. Dan, do the damn thing.
Dude, you were born to do this, man. Felt like you're like Roger Cronkite sitting back. Hit me with these questions.
Hey, I was.
Did you get through any of your questions?
Oh yeah, no, you got through all of them.
Oh, cool.